Hey team, welcome back to another great episode of the Intentional Agribusiness Leader Podcast. This is your host, Mark Jewell, and today I'm excited to bring you Mr. Josh Wagner. He is the president and CEO of Hutson, Inc. We're going implements today, you guys. I'm excited to bring you some diversity in the group, in the lineup of podcasts. Josh, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, you get the same first question everybody gets, man. What does it mean for you to be intentional?
I would say it's more around being purposeful, thoughtful, deliberate. And when I say that, I mean in my everyday actions. It's not only when folks are watching or around.
Mm.
So if I'm being those ways in the actions that I'm taking, the decisions that I'm making, and the strategies that our team is creating, then I feel like it means that I'm more taking into consideration the long-term impact of whatever choices that our team may be making are, and whether that's for the company, for the employees, customers, stakeholders, however you want to look at that. And then, being intentional with that part of it, being able to define and communicate that to the team in a clear way that makes sense, right? So here's a vision of where we are and where we want to go. That part takes a little bit more, I guess, of setting some priorities. You'll hear me often say, I end all of my email correspondence with pressing on. It's hard to bring certain things into the workplace, but a lot of people know what pressing on towards the prize means. So when they were like, "Oh, what pressing on? What does that mean?" I'm like, "I'm pressing on towards the real prize by being intentional about these things, about informed decisions, and ensuring alignment with my entire senior leadership team, and not trumping people and having an open ear." It just makes sure that there's an alignment between not only our company's values and actions, but my values and actions.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess at a high level, I would say it's just driving the organization forward with focus, mindfulness, and a greater purpose.
Yeah. I like all of that. And one of the things that sticks out to me about what you say is the level of gravity that comes with being purposeful, being thoughtful, being deliberate, because you're leading an organization of around 900 people. With a high level of sales, a high level of growth that you guys have experienced. I'm sure we'll get into that in just a little bit. Man, since I've been studying intentional leadership for about the year and a half, sort of just made up the term and started going in and look, okay, what does it mean to be intentional? How do we apply that to leadership? What has challenged me the most is just how stinking hard it can be to actually be that deliberate. Because you're pressing forward and planning for the future of a company that holds a lot of importance to 900 families, right? And the people that we serve from a service and product standpoint, right? Man, it takes a whole different level of thinking, doesn't it?
It does, and it's my thing too is I take that very personal. I always heard about leaders earlier in my career who would talk about, not being able to sleep at night or having just this heavy weight about them or whatever that looked like, until you actually step into those shoes, you get in front of your team and you make a commitment to keep them gainfully employed and to create an environment that's safe, that they feel like they can always count on to come into. There's times when you can't follow through on that. You feel as though you've failed. And there's been times, unfortunately, that I've led this organization where I've failed. Not with intent, I never want to, but you take it personal. And when you know these people's wives and their kids, and you see them in the community, and just how dependent they are on our team making the right decisions for their livelihood, it's heavy. I mean, it really is. And I do not and will not ever take that lightly.
Yeah. Oh, there's a lot. Around here, we call it gravitas. In fact, kid you not, the parent company that owns Thrive today is actually called Gravitas Enterprises. This is the
Okay.
of our family, and we named it that, right? Because when you think about gravitas, like it's like when you say something, it means something, right? There's a gravity to it, there's a weight to it, and so as we look to create programs for organizations like yours or others in the agriculture industry, man, it's like we know that we're working with leaders who have a lot of weight on their shoulders. So we need to provide them with good resources and communities and coaching and masterminds that actually help them walk through the fire of being an intentional leader. So it's good stuff, man. Tell us a little bit about you and your background. Talk to us about the company. Let people know what you guys are about.
Yeah. So I've been with the company for about 7 years now. I'm actually the baby on our senior leadership team. I like saying that because I'm almost 50 now, and baby just sounds like a better word. But the thing I love about that is we have very low turnover, specifically at the top. Our leaders have been in place for a while. I didn't come in and just like bring my whole crew in and we're going to redo all of this. I came in and we merged with the existing leadership that was here. The interesting thing about our team is that almost all of us are, I would call outsiders that came from outside the ag world. Most of us came from corporate America, and we all either have multiple degrees or we've all gone to grad school, and it gives us a different perspective on creating strategies and having vision for the future. So we're not planning for just next year or 2 years or 3 years. We actually have a 5-year plan. And that way we can also share that vision with the rest of the team and help them understand this is where you fit in, and or if you desire to do more with the vision in front of you, bring to us what you would like to be a part of. So we've grown from a 12-store, $300 million organization from 2017 to a 31-store, $1.4 billion organization as of the end of 2023. Those will be the latest figures, and that is pretty astronomical growth in that short period of time. Some of it's inorganic, right? We had some acquisitions. As a matter of fact, we had 6 different acquisitions during that period, where we basically picked up, I'd say 70% of the state of Michigan. But mostly, we grew organically, and we did that with consistency, strong sales reps, a strong technician base, fantastic precision ag team, and what I would say a very collaborative leadership team that works really well together.
Beautiful. I think one of the things that I see a lot of organizations struggle with when there is a lot of acquisition and merging together of smaller entities into a larger entity, and you got a lot of old cultures and old sacred cows that are involved. So how have you guys worked through the navigation of bringing cultures together and get people singing the same song?
People are like, oh yeah, we've got this great new culture now, and this is what we're going to do, and only it never works that way. And because I hear people talking about, well, this is our culture, or you'll be with someone else and they'll say, well, this is what I think our culture is. And really, your culture is what you do. Right? I mean, you know that. You can say whatever you want, but literally it comes down to what do you do every day? Because if you're not living your culture, then your culture doesn't exist. You can call it whatever you want. But you look at your weakest link in every aspect, and you've got 90% of the people doing the right thing, and they're driving this culture of empowerment and building people up and lifting people up and putting our team first. Then you've got the 10% that suck. We've all got them. Don't have to talk about who they are. That's your culture. Unfortunately, it is, because they're going to drag you down to that level. So what I would challenge our organization as well as anybody else's is find those people and either invest in them to the extent of getting them to believe in what you're trying to drive, or get rid of them. I often tell people, I hate to say it, but it's the asshole word, right? Like, if you're an asshole, you can't work here.
Right.
We'll sniff you out. We're going to find you, and then we're going to get rid of you, because we desire to have people who are team focused, who are driving with a bigger purpose, who do live that culture that we desire of empowerment, putting others first, uh, specifically God, family, and then Hutson's always third. Actually, Hudson's probably fourth because your friends should be in there before Hudson too. And I believe that. I preach it. It took me longer to live it than it should have. I would be like, y'all, this is our culture. This is what we're going to do. And then I'd work 80 hours a week. As I've done this longer and longer, I've realized it's just as important for me to reflect, work less, spend more time away from here. It also makes me a better leader. So some actual physical ways that we have worked on our culture, though, or when we acquired these other dealerships, where we would take some of our folks, specifically from our original 12 locations, that we felt like got it, that were living the culture, and they literally moved to Michigan. So Michigan was the last state that we had bought all the stores in. And not that they had bad culture up there, right? They had their own good way of doing things. They were great people. But as we kept buying people, everyone has their own set or idea of what their culture is. So everybody could have good intent, but now you've got the 6 acquisitions plus ours. You've got 7 cultures you're trying to get all together. What we had was working, so we tried to drive what we had, but we also used parts of what they were doing that were better than what we were doing. And over time, as we've gotten used to each other and our teams, we've found a core nucleus of what that looks like. And it's creating an environment, I would say a safe environment, that you're allowed to come in late if your kid is sick, or if you need a mental health break, go home. If you make a mistake, that's cool. We're good with it. It's putting others first. It's like I said, it's God, family, friends, work, and we're all accepting of that. And if you're not, you can't be here. You can't work here. So we're not perfect. We're not there. That's where we're going, but that is the culture that we're driving for and desiring to have.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think when you have an established statement that says, hey, it's this, right? This or something. It's God, it's family, it's and then the business, right? And in that order, nothing else.
Right.
Read that long enough. What I've seen, what I've observed is that sort of creates a kind of gravity, right? And
Yes.
people gravitate to that. At the same time, you have, in order to have gravity, you have to have polarity. And so it creates a sort of polar force that it will actually deflect the people who no longer fit that or don't fit that.
Yes. Amen. And they're the ones that don't fit are usually vocal about it because they'll just say, I don't agree. And that's fine. You don't have to agree. But there's other choices and there's other employers that are out there. And we would recommend that if you don't want to fit into how we're trying to do things here, please, by all means, go find somewhere where you feel more comfortable. That's fine, right? We're not handcuffing you. We're not tying you here. You have choices. Take advantage of those choices.
Yeah. Has that worked for you in terms of talent attraction as well? Are you finding that there are people that want to be part of that mission?
Yeah, I love it because we have a really high retention rate. Our turnover exists more in our technician base just because they're highly sought after, they're highly desired. It's hard to get them. It's hard to get a good trained technician. So you'll see some of those turn more than you would the normal workforce. But I'd say that we are a leader with retention. Once people come to work for our organization, they typically stay. We have our own things. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to put it out there as though we're this company that walks on water, because we're not. But we try to do a lot of the things right. For example, I'm about to hit the road again. I will go to every location within our organization and sit down with the employees, with an HR leader and then another leader that'll go with me, and we'll seek specific feedback from everybody. What are your roadblocks? What are your issues? What are your problems? And when we say we empower them and give them a voice, we're literally saying, tell us what you want, tell us what you need, what are we missing? We can't see everything from Evansville, Indiana, where our corporate office is. And then once we leave that meeting with that list of things, we have 30 days to reply. Our team then assigns those tasks. We go through them. A lot of the things we can do that. We can change that. We can change this. Sometimes it's no, we can't do it. But it's being clear, transparent, and having that communication that's key. But then when you come around again the next year and we're having these tables, you can say, hey, we had 8 things brought up or 10 things brought up or 20 things brought up last year, and 90% of those were fixed. We heard you. And then people start believing, okay, if I raise my voice or they will actually do something about it. So that's really critical and key and part of that culture piece too. But when we say that we empower people, we give them a voice, we go to them and say, tell us, right? Not we're assuming, not we think. This came from the customer facing employees, who to me are the most important employees in our organization. And it's important that they're heard.
So what I'm hearing you say, correct me if I'm wrong, right? But we're going out from a leadership perspective. You're going out, listening to your frontline employees, the people that are out there, talking with the customers, working with the customers, experiencing the tail end of all of your decisions, right?
Basically,
and
yeah.
That's it. Culture. What does somebody say on the podcast? The culture is implemented from the top down, but it's experienced from the bottom up.
And that's exactly right. And that's why, to me, anybody that's running a company from a corner office is doing it wrong. You can't do it. I've had the office I've always wanted. Nice big corner of it. I'm very rarely there because you can't lead a company from the corner. You have to lead a company from the ground. And that's where the action is. And that's where the feedback comes from. And if you want to create a culture, get out on the ground with the people who are driving the culture.
Yep, absolutely. So you guys you're going out, you're listening, you're hearing what they have to say, and then bringing that back through. And the one part that he said I think was unique, maybe I'm sure a lot of people do it, they just haven't talked about it on the show yet. And that's actually going back to the list of things. Like, hey, here's the list of all the things you asked for. We got 80 of them done. And then so I have to imagine that starts to build a level of trust.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And that's what I tell the team is when we originally go out and whether it's acquiring somebody or that we've got some new talent on the ground or whatever that is, your trust tank is on empty, right? You have no trust built. And as long as your trust tank is on empty, whatever you say is just words, right? They don't mean anything. But as you get on the ground and you create those relationships and you drive that trust and you start filling your trust tank up, at some point you've got a full tank. Now they just take you at face value. You tell them you're going to change something, they know it's going to get changed. You tell them you're going to do something, they know you're going to do it. Up until that point, there's always a little piece that's like, are you going to hear me? So that's why there's been so much intentional focus on being visible to our team and making sure that we're following up to say, hey, for those of you that didn't bring anything up, that left the meeting and complained after the meeting was over, because that's what happens, right? We're like, hey, it's open floor, and but then some folks won't speak up. They'll be frustrated when you leave because of whatever is not going right. And all we ask is that we know about it so that we can take care of it. But when we can come back and say, hey, everyone that spoke up, here's your answer, here's what we're doing, finally creating the credibility, it starts breaking that wall down with the other folks on the team that will now maybe go ahead and say, hey, I wish I'd brought this up. Can we take a look at this? And of course, the answer is always yes.
Yeah, I love it. I love the approach. You said something really interesting that I want you to dive back into.
Mm-hmm.
This was around, I think what I wrote down was being a better leader by actually working less. So I would love for you to qualify that a little bit. So how is that showing up in the culture? What does that look like? I mean, there's a time and place where we all going to go all in.
Yeah. To me, when I was younger, it was all about one-upping. I worked 60 hours. Well, I worked 66. I worked 70 hours. It showed where my priorities were. And my priorities were in proving to other people that I was working. And that was empty. That became very empty to me, and it became unhealthy. And I got to where I was busy, but I wasn't being productive. And I spent too much time in busy work with emails, trying to be involved in all the decisions. And as I've grown in my role, I'm realizing that the more I depend on my team, the more I delegate, the healthier I am, the more empowered they are, and the better we all are as a team. So I'll give you an example. Been very fortunate enough to get tapped to do some speaking on behalf of of Deere and Company, and they recently flew me to Barcelona, Spain, and I was a keynote speaker for the CEO Summit for Region 2. And during the couple of days that I was over there throughout the day busy, 5 years ago, I would have been emailing, calling, I didn't think about my team. It never came up. I didn't worry about it because I knew they had it.
Mm-hmm.
I knew they didn't need me.
Mm-hmm.
Then I realized in looking back, as I was hitting back, that I finally got it, right? Like, okay, this is leadership. It's creating a safe space that people can grow around me and I not be worried about, oh, they're going to take my job. That's the wrong way to look at it. If you're just growing the people the way you should, and they feel like they're a part of something bigger and there's a purpose there, and they're being trusted to just do their jobs without being micromanaged, without being babysat, everybody wins, number one. But number two, I get my life back, my personal life back. And mental health it's a real epidemic nowadays. It's specific, I feel like, with some of the younger folks, but it exists with CEOs of these larger companies who I don't think spend enough time building the teams to surround themselves with that allow them to not work all the time. It's okay if I only work 50 hours, right? That's fine. That should be normal. And I shouldn't be embarrassed to say I only worked 45 hours last week. But for a long time I was. Like, oh, I only worked 45 hours. That's awful. No, that's okay. That's fine. Go live your other life so that you're more, I guess, mentally refocused and recharged and mentally healthy so that when I get back into my seat, I'm ready to go, right? So anyway, that part's important.
Thank you for diving into that. One of the challenges that we face in our business is called Thrive Today. Our mission is to help people and organizations stop surviving and start thriving. We do that through a whole person approach. Doesn't matter if we're doing leadership development, culture development, or sales team development. Whole person approach. So our goal is not only give you a better salesperson, let's just say, as an example, or a location manager or whatever, but to give you back a better version of that human, not just to the company, but to that family, that community.
Right. That's right.
Our models are all designed to do specifically that, and be productive at work.
Correct.
Somebody challenged me one time, like, well, what do you mean? How do you define what is a good leader? How do you define a good leader? I said, it's very, very clear. The good book says, know a tree by its fruit. Know a tree by its fruit. If the fruit is afraid to grow in the absence of the leader, that's not a good leader.
Correct. Amen. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah. And so anyway, that's appreciate you, Don. I know a lot of us struggle, right? I was talking with one of my mastermind groups yesterday about, how important it is. The highest level of creation, the highest level of value creation happens through imagination. When you actually, as a leader, take time to sit down and think up new and better ways of doing things, right? And then vet that with your team, see if it's worth implementing. That's where I look.
You're right.
So, and then I asked them, I said, how many of you feel guilty out of 10 guys? How many of you feel guilty when you take time to just sit and think?
Probably all of them.
Right? Feel guilty for doing it. Why? People don't see you implement, right? But implementation is the order of value creation.
Yep, agree.
Yeah. Good stuff, man. Let's learn a little bit more about Josh. I'd love to dive in. What's been the biggest hurdle for you, Josh, you've had to overcome in your career?
Oh, geez. The biggest hurdle? I would say there's so many of them. Mm-hmm. I would say it's the ability to navigate and manage change effectively, because you've heard it, Sandy, right? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results.
Yeah.
So I'm a big advocate of change management, and not everyone is. People are incredibly scared of change. I understand. I've been scared of change myself. Everything is so it's fast paced. It's constantly evolving. Um, Especially now with all the technology advancements that Deere is making, the market shifts, there's regulatory changes, there's global crisis everywhere you look around. Um, you got to be agile, you got to be flexible, you got to be proactive, you got to be strategic about everything you do, because also you're being quoted with everything you say. So you got to pick your words correctly all the time too. Um, and then the other part is I really desire a very diverse workforce, right? Um, I really appreciate having diversity. And when you've got different backgrounds and cultures, and to really truly understand how to cultivate a workplace environment that promotes collaboration, communication, and inclusivity, all of those things around what it takes to build and lead a diverse team effectively uh, can be hard. I mean, that can be a hurdle that's easy to trip over and fall and expose yourself. But as I've worked through those, and I've really worked on trying to create more empathy, because that was probably a blind spot for me early on. My background, my parents didn't graduate high school, right? None of my siblings went to college. I was very, very poor for most of my life. So people who were struggling, I had trouble having empathy for, because I'm like, hey, suck it up. I'm not using my crutch. I'm using this as fuel, but not everybody's like me. And finally getting to a point to where I was able to show that empathy, and I still lack that. My wife reminds me all the time, like, have more empathy. Uh, but doing that, obviously, again, is a big part of being able to build and lead those diverse teams. You got to be able to create. What's the best way to put this? I guess the ability to foster like a sense of belonging, like they belong to something, like they're not just clocking in and clocking out. They come in because they're a part of something bigger, and even that part's kind of hard, right? They can be really, really difficult. But then also there's a balance when you're talking about hurdles. There's a balance between short-term results versus long-term sustainability. I mean, I've had trouble in my career because I can be tempted by focusing on like this year's profitability, which we can talk about in a little bit. But I read the book The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek, and it changed my thought process on immediate profitability and immediate performance metrics. But you've got to understand the importance of investing in the future and innovation and talent development and strategic planning and all those things that go into your roadmap for 3, 4, 5 years down the road. So basically allowing myself the empathy card and growing from those things, um, that has mostly allowed me to overcome most of the hurdles so that I can demonstrate, in my opinion, maybe not others, some resilience to some of the pushback I get, to have the vision and the adaptability and the empathy that we talked about, and strategic thinking by addressing those problems that we just talked about, and then always focusing on continuously developing myself, my skills, right? Because I've got to make sure that I'm the best version of me so that I can lead our organization in a way that's dynamic and competitive and that we're winning by also being fair.
Yeah, yeah. Well, anytime we get into change management, then having to see multiple perspectives lead through, diverse change and the inclusion of diversity, man, that's a
Yeah.
that's a call to, and I know a lot of leaders are just like, hey, everybody, suck it up. This is the job.
Yeah.
They're like, let's go.
It's the rules, man. You just do what I say, not what I do.
Ties back to what we talked about earlier around the culture thing, around having like a good solid credo, motto, mission, culture statement. This is what we're about, and this is what we're not about, because that actually start to help solve as a lens, right, through which we can evaluate whether or not this is either good for us or not good for us. So
Yes, I agree with you 100%.
good. What you alluded to a little bit. What are you reading? What do you recommend people jump into from a book, podcast? What do you like?
Yeah, so obviously they need to be listening to yours because turns out it's pretty darn good. Uh, I book wise, it's always been in the sales world because I was a sales leader most of my life. But I've really been caught up in Simon Sinek for several years now. Started with Leaders Eat Last, and then most recently The Infinite Game.
Yeah.
And it actually drove me to create what I envisioned for our team that we needed, and that was called the Infinite Bench. A quick Google on that, and you'll find an article that was published in Farm Equipment Magazine about me that I presented on at the Dealership Mind Summit. And it's been 2 or 3 years ago, and it was about how to build an infinite bench. So basically, Sinek explores in his book, it's the concept of viewing life and business as an infinite game, right, rather than a finite one. So business leaders, as I used to, looked at their business as finite. There was a beginning, there was an end, right? We started January 1st, it ends December 31st. This is the budget. You win or you lose, and then you start over. And when I read the book, I realized that the goal wasn't to win the game. The goal was to perpetuate the game. It was to keep it going, like it never ends.
Mm-hmm.
So we're supposed to be creating an organization that is succeeding long after we are gone, right? So that's the whole part about building leaders and creating additional leaders. It's so that we have done our jobs to a point that our children's children still have a job within this organization that is still blossoming and growing. And that, again, it's amazing to me how that still contrasts with how many people are still very traditional thinkers. They still believe very much in that finite game. They only worry about what's my bonus going to be this year, how many vacations can I take this year, or whatever about me this year.
Mm-hmm.
And we've really got to get away from short-term goals and competition, because it's us against us, right? People, they have trouble believing that, but it's us against us. And just adopting that infinite mindset, really, it just, to us, it's worked for us because it's allowed us to have more sustainable success. It's allowed us to have stronger leadership. It's allowed to have us, I would say, like a greater sense of fulfillment. There's a lot of those things that just work better by thinking with an infinite mindset.
I love it, man. And I especially in the market that we're going into in the ag industry this year that we're in right now, not going
Right.
into the mindsets have certainly calmed down a little bit. Right. And we,
Yes.
like Tony Robbins says, where your focus goes, your energy flows. So if your focus is on the down market, then your energy is going to flow to the down market. And that's what's going to keep getting the attention, right? Because where our attention goes, our energy flows. So if you can take a step back and say, okay, well, let's be honest, nobody's going to stop farming.
Right.
They're still going to put a crop in the ground. They're still going to need equipment. They're still going to need service. It might look a little bit different, but hey, we can just shift our perspective a little bit and say, okay, we're going to weather this cycle. And then eventually, like it always does, it will cycle back up in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
How do we ready for that? How do we build the organization for that? How do we lead for that? How do we lead the message on that? And what does that mean in the interim? So we could probably go much deeper on that. We don't have time to get into it today, but I'm just curious, who's been someone that has mentored you that you've looked up to? Who's been somebody you've looked up to over the course of your career?
It's not really anybody I've worked with. That probably sounds awful. My favorite phrase that I use a lot, and I say it to my children. I've got a daughter in med school, and I've got a son that's already graduated grad school. Very proud of those two. And they're very kind people, and they mostly got that from their mother. But I always tell them to really work hard at being the leader that you always wish you had. I tell that to my team. And I read it a long time ago, and I never forgot it, because I had a couple of leaders that were great, don't get me wrong, but for the most part, I had finite thinking leaders who were very internally focused, and they led by intimidation or fear. And I told my children when they were young, I told my wife earlier in our marriage, and I was like, if I ever get a chance to lead an organization, I will lead with compassion and forgiveness and love. And I tell people on my team, I love them. I don't care. It freaked people out at first. They're like, holy cow, what's going on here? We had our summit a few months ago, and it's I said, if you knew how many grown men like kissed me on the face, right? So, oh no, like where we have broken down barriers where it's okay to say, I got you, I love you, we're in this together. It creates a bond that you cannot imagine.
Yeah.
And to me, I feel like I've been able to become the leader that I wanted.
Beautiful.
That's what I envisioned. So I'm a work in progress, man. I know that, and I have so many blind spots. But when I'm told about them, and I don't, hey, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that. I will work on them. And I would challenge anybody else that's listening to be open-minded to change, because I promise that you all have blind spots too. And when people are giving you that feedback, most of the time it's out of love. It's not to be cruel or mean. They want to see you be better. But if you go back to who inspired me, or who I'd admired most or whatever, it would have been my father-in-law of all things. My father-in-law passed away 10 years ago from glioblastoma.
Mm.
And I did not come from a religious family. Not that religious is everything. I don't like today. It's not really about it. I don't care if you're Baptist or Pentecostal or what. I don't care what it is. It's about the relationship, right? I don't really care about what religion it is. But he knew my family. He knew we were kind of rough. And his daughter, he was a Southern Baptist deacon. You remember how the old Bible would be like, you can't come into my house if you're not going to church. And but he did it out of love, right? He was kind about it. But he said, hey, here's the expectations. You want to date my daughter? You got to go to church. You want to be in my house? You got to read the word. And I did it because I had to. I didn't want to. But then after you do it, and then you learn it, and then you walk it, and then it just kind of changes how you think. And he told me he loved me, and he hugged me and told me it was okay for a man to tell another man that he loved him. Right? There's nothing wrong with that. And because of him, I think it helped me be a better dad as I had my kiddos, and allowed them to express emotions and be open to that. And I'm not a spanker. Never spanked my kiddos. Didn't have to, but I led with love, and he did too. And he inspired me to be a better person. So I've kind of taken that throughout every journey in my life. I miss him sorely, but I'm grateful for his leadership that I had in my life while I had it.
Beautiful. Man, thank you for going there.
Yeah. Good. That was a tough one there.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you bringing it up and helping people just hear a different side of leadership, because that's, at the end of the day, we're all called to here to serve in one capacity or another, and that's very intentional. Josh, thanks for being on, man. This has been a great one. When we get into our doubling up and bringing people back on, give me a call. I want to go deeper on some of the stuff.
I would love that very much. Appreciate your time. I've enjoyed it today, and I look forward to listening to many of your podcasts, both now and in the future. So appreciate it, Mark.
Share it around. Appreciate you doing that.
All right. Take care. Have a good one.